The woman who drove her car onto the route of Plymouth's half-marathon has explained her actions, and said how she felt trapped and was left in tears by the incident. Joanna Pine, a 66-year-old retired physiotherapist and counsellor, admitted her actions were, in some ways, a stupid thing to do, but insisted she was unable to drive out of her home to attend an event where people were depending on her because all exits around Sutton Harbour were blocked to make way for the race. Ms. Pine, who is disabled and displayed her blue badge during the incident, said she was left with no option but to try to inch her car out of a side road, Hawkers Avenue, after waiting more than 10 minutes for a gap in the stream of runners to open up. But as she tried to drive off, her vehicle was engulfed by an angry mob of onlookers who swore at her, kicked her car, tried to get into it and even attempted to snatch her keys from the ignition. Woman drives car into path of Plymouth half-marathon runners. The car edges out of Hawkers Avenue, to shock of everyone. Image, Rob Bricknell. She said no one listened to her explanation that she was late for her appointment and needed access to the road, and said the entire incident left her upset and in tears. Ms. Pine, who lives in Mariners Court, said that in previous years race officials had leafleted residents advising them what to do, and a race marshal had even helped her drive out onto the route so as not to interfere with runners. She said there had been no information pre-race this year and there were no marshals on the B3240 at Brentonside when she drove onto it. And she said she wasn't the only motorists driving on the road during the race. Some ways it was a stupid thing to do, she said. But I was trying to be careful and I felt trapped. No one was listening to me or trying to help me. I was going at 1 mile per hour and inching out. People were stunned by the incident during the Britain's Ocean City half-marathon race around the streets of Plymouth on Sunday, May 20, 2018. Video of the altercation between Ms. Pine and onlookers has been viewed thousands of times online. Joanna Pine. Ms. Pine is a well-known and respected poet and campaigner for human rights. She is a director of Plymouth Pride, and her poetry, which has been widely published in anthologies and in the Herald, has been read at events in Plymouth to condemn homophobia and to remember the victims of the Orlando nightclub shootings. She has been actively involved in National Hate Crime Awareness Week and works to promote HIV and AIDS awareness. Ms. Pine moved to the Mariners Court block of flats in 2014 and said, "That year I remember getting a leaflet saying if the half-marathon was happening and where we could park our cars, in various car parks, and there was a note so we did not have to pay, or if we decided to drive out we had to do it by a certain time." In 2015 I did not have a leaflet, but there seemed to be more marshals, particularly in Hawkers Avenue, which is the only way you can come out. She explained that the road system is such that all routes into Sutton Harbour are one-way, and only, apart from the Hawkers Avenue exit. She said that in 2015 marshals had allowed her to drive out of the side road at 8:30 a.m. In 2016 and 2017 megaseconds Pine was not at home on the weekends of the half-marathon. PGB runner slams woman who drove car onto half-marathon route. Joanna Pine talking to an onlooker during the half-marathon incident. Image, Rob Bricknell. "But this time I was at home," she said. "I'd been really busy and had no information or leaflets put through my door and did not think about what time it was starting. I came out at 8:45 a.m. to pick up a friend and go to a writing workshop in Oakhampton. The roads were closed and I was thinking, how am I going to get out? I went down all the roads, some even the wrong way, but everyone was blocked. I was totally trapped. So I came back to Hawkers Avenue and sat there for a good 10 minutes. There was no one there, no officials down there at all. So I got out and moved a couple of bollards. A gentleman from Mariners Court came out and said it was ridiculous and that no one could get out. I then slowly edged out a little bit to see how many runners were coming, and no runners were coming down. A gentleman came over and I thought he was a marshal. I was going to ask if there was an opportunity to get to the other side of the road and get to Exeter Street, but as I went to say that, he aggressively said to stop the car and that I had no right to be there and didn't want to listen to me. People are raging over women who drove it. Plymouth half-marathon runners Joanna Pine reading at the vigil for the victims of the Orlando nightclub shootings at Cafe Kiss, Plymouth, in 2016. Image, John Allen. He said he would take my keys, and he tried to open the car, but he turned out not to be an official. I was just trying to look for a gap big enough to get across the road. As I started to move, I saw a gap and thought I could probably get across. But I was surrounded by Joe Public. They were abusive, banging the car, pushing the car. One guy kicked the car. They caused potentially more problems than not. These were all people watching. None of the runners took part in it, Ms. Pine said. One of the people surrounding her car described herself as an off-duty policewoman. She said the road was closed. Ms. Pine said, "A marshal then came down and indicated for me to take my car up to the traffic lights. Another woman had come up in another car and they were speaking to her too. I got out of my car and asked what I should do, wait for the police. But the officials said I should drive off. Why she isn't Princess Meghan thanks to royal rules. A man attempts to force the car back using his arms and a cone. Image, Rob Bricknell. Everyone was very aggressive. I was just trying to explain that I was giving the workshop and was late picking someone up. If I was just attending it, I wouldn't have been so anxious, but I felt a sense of responsibility to people that were coming to the workshop. When I picked my friend up, I was shaking and burst into tears." Ms. Pine said she has not watched or read news reports since the incident, or viewed the many comments made about it on social media. "I don't want to," she said. "I had no idea until this morning, the day after the race, when I left Mariners Court and was told by a neighbor I had made the headlines." Ms. Pine said she thought about what had happened, and when she returned from running her workshop in Oakhampton she went to Charles Cross Police Station, but added, "It was closed." That was at 6:05 p.m. She said she has learned from the incident, but also said there had not been enough information for residents and the event needed better marshalling. "I have not interest in the half-marathon, and so why would I look it up," she said. "But if I had a leaflet saying the time it started, I would have parked my car somewhere else and not been involved. For me, hindsight and reflection are a good thing and we learn," she said. "I was upset.